Bam.
All right, so this is episode 2, Seeking Skeptics, and I wanted to invite my friend Alex to discuss and debate some things going on in today's society. Alex is a Trump voter from 2016. I'm a Bernie voter from 2016. And at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that separates us. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that also we agree on, and we do see problems in our political discord that's happening as a whole. So this year, Alex is not a Trump supporter. This year, he's Yang Gang.
Yang Gang 2020. That's right. Let's expand. I'm going to stop you right there. Let's kind of expand on that whole I'm a Trump voter. He's a Bernie Sanders voter. The actual political standpoint I take is I am a conservative liberal, right? And we can explain what that means a little bit later, but I just wanted to clarify.
I would say so we can get into a little bit more.
Sure.
Because I would say a lot of people tell me they're conservative liberals, and they actually don't know what that means. Okay? So there's a lot of conservatives that I meet that say they're conservative, but then they're for social policies, like Medicare for all, a living wage, breaking up the banks, stuff like that. So what I would like to start the conversation at is what made you, somebody who is now back in the Democratic Party, go from Trump to now you're back and you're wanting to vote for someone like Andrew Yang?
So I guess we got to take a step back, and it's not that I'm in the Democratic camp, and it's not that I'm in the Republican camp either. I'm firmly in the center, but I lean on some things more to the left, and I lean heavily on certain other things more to the right side of the whole political system we have. So I'm on most issues, I'm firm center. So if we want to take back to that 2016 time period, America has changed in the last 4 years. A lot of things have shifted. So my mindset back then was, one, Hillary Clinton was a total con artist, and the Democrats rigged the election against Bernie Sanders. I was a Bernie supporter through and through.
What made you think that? So you're a Bernie supporter that voted Trump. What makes you think Hillary was a con artist?
So in my opinion, Hillary and the Clintons in general, and we're seeing this right now, they have so much controversy around them, and they have so many political ties to powers, to oil companies, to all these executives with the banks and a bunch of other industries. And this was where the whole issue of money. You can't have money in politics because we get the result we have now, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So my thing is this: I believe we need the first woman president. We do need that, but Clinton does not deserve that seat. Okay. Hillary Clinton herself does not deserve the seat. And it really upset me that you had a lot of people on the left just buying into, they had this cult-like mentality around Clinton. But they forget in the early 2000s when she stood up and was against gay marriage and everything else, because she's not authentic. Somebody like Bernie Sanders, who shows him getting arrested during the Chicago riots, supporting what he's still supporting to this day, supporting the human rights and the violations that were going against the black community. And somebody like Clinton, who's consistently shifting her political view to what's popular in the time. I can't get behind a fake person. At least Trump was honest, brutally honest. And we had two evils. And Trump was the lesser of two evils, in my opinion. Trump was stupid enough to get him in this whole process he's going through now. And I knew Trump really would not cause that much damage in the end.
He's caused a lot of damage.
He has caused a lot of damage, and we'll talk about that. But Clinton, in my opinion, would have caused more damage.
I actually make that case a lot of times too, that I think Hillary could possibly have been the lesser of two evils. I mean, like, I always think about what the simulation, I always like talking about the simulation, but the simulation that Hillary Clinton is president, and the Jeffrey Epstein stuff still happened. What does that reality look like?
That reality is very more complex than the current one we're in.
It is very much more complex, because now we have the first husband, I guess, implicated in all of this stuff with Jeffrey Epstein. And it's just one thing after another. So recently, you saw the clip with ABC. Project Veritas came out and basically had the leaker who leaked the video footage of ABC's host on live air admitting that they buried Jeffrey Epstein's story 3 years ago. So I was thinking about this the other day. 3 years ago would have been what?
3 years ago would have been well, what it would have been 2016.
It would have been 2016.
Yeah, I had to think about that.
So what's really interesting is that you said that Hillary had a lot of power. I find it very interesting that she literally, the story that would have ruined her campaign, got buried by ABC, and it got buried by other billionaires too.
Sure.
But the thing about it is like, ABC still hasn't even released the overall interviews from that still.
So I never made that connection. I never made that. You're correct. The Clintons, and it's so interesting because in that interview she said we had the Clintons, and what she means by that is she had Bill Clinton, like they had the evidence.
They had everything.
You know, they convinced. What the saddest part about that is they did their job. ABC, the reporters, did their jobs of getting these people out of hiding who were scared for their lives. Obviously, we see why they were scared for their lives. Look what happened to Epstein. And got them out of hiding. Interviewed these young women, flew them around the country to interview them. And then the story gets buried conveniently while Hillary is running for election. I never made that correlation, actually. So
it's there's a lot of stuff going on with this. So basically, you talked about a little bit of the rigging. I actually have a video that I was going to show you. So one of the concerns that I have in the upcoming election is that we still haven't addressed the rigging that took place in 2016.
Yeah.
Okay. We still haven't even talked about it. So we haven't talked about the fact that our party set it up where there were only, I believe, 6 total debates for the entire democratic process.
Mm-hmm.
So they limited the overall amount of debates. Okay. Not just that, but superdelegates was already picked from the very beginning. They picked Hillary's side. We find out from Donna Brazil. So I'm going to educate you a little bit on this because I lived watching my candidate, who I believed was the best choice, get sandbagged in 2016. Okay, so what happened is Debbie Wasserman Schultz was playing politics basically. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
she was playing unfair sides. Tulsi Gabbard, the presidential candidate who's running now, stepped down from DNC leadership. Okay, she was in DNC leadership where she was like, I think, second in command of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She stepped down from her post and wanted to endorse Bernie Sanders. Okay, the reason she did this was because she said she felt the process was unfair against him, and she felt it was too great of a cost to give it up. She had to go out and she had to step out and put herself on the limit and go after this and make sure that she gives an option to get Bernie elected. Okay, so after this all occurs, all these stories come out. Debbie Wasserman Schultz has to step down from her chair in DNC. Donna Brazil takes her spot, and we as progressives were finally hopeful. We're like, all right, cool. We'll have a good fair shot for the rest of the primary season. We'll take what it is, and then we find out Donna Brazil leaked debate questions during the CNN debate to Hillary Clinton. So before the debate even started, Donna Brazil had debate questions ready to, and Hillary Clinton knew the questions are going to be answered so she could prepare for them.
Right. So I kind of want to, and that kind of explains, why I had to go into the Trump camp towards the end.
You felt that way, yeah.
I felt so betrayed by the Democratic Party because I did see all of that, and I saw the sketchiness, and we're even seeing it more now where you have leftist news organizations that are literally burying stories, right? Mm-hmm. The biggest pedophilia ring in America's history buried, but yet they run ads and they run shows about not being sex trafficked. ABC runs like programs and shows that are centered around, if you're a young female, how to not get sex trafficked.
How to catch a predator.
But how to catch a predator, right? God. And yet they bury a key story because it doesn't fit their agenda, right? So we're caught up in money in politics, and I very much...
Well, that's money in politics.
That's money in politics, but it's the other reason I wanted Trump, right? Is because, and I didn't want Trump, so let me make that clear. I didn't want Trump, and I didn't want Hillary. This is not the ideal. The 2016 election was not the ideal election I wanted. It wasn't the ideal election anybody wanted. And this is why Andrew Yang is so prominent right now. The American people in the Midwest, and I love that Andrew Yang talks about this, were losing their jobs due to automation. And Trump was the only candidate promising to, and that's what, it was really interesting. You see Trump saying, let's make America great again. Hillary's response is America's already great. Well, the American people didn't feel that America was already great. you had people in the Midwest primarily losing a lot of warehouse jobs, GM jobs, and a bunch of other jobs. And Trump promised to bring those jobs back, and we didn't. Over 4 million jobs have been automated away in the last 4 years. During his presidency, he did nothing. In fact, we've taken steps back due to climate change and everything else. All these progressive steps have been taken back. I don't believe Hillary would have continued to make those progressive steps. I think it would have been a smokescreen. That's my problem with the left half the time is you see they get up there and they say we're going to do all of this, but as soon as they get in the office, it's like a smokescreen.
So you believe Hillary wouldn't do it, but you believe Bernie would?
Yeah, and that's why Bernie was shut down. That's 100%. There's no conspiracy behind that.
So I want to tail back to the whole money and politics thing. So you said that you believe ABC. The reason why ABC and the whole Epstein thing died is because of money and politics. So I want to kind of tailor something that I think that we need to start finally talking about that has been ignored since the 80s. Okay, I've mentioned his name before. I don't know if you looked him up at all. Do you know who Noam Chomsky is?
Yeah, you have referred a couple videos for me. I have not watched them, regrettably. Okay. But I don't know enough about him to know him as a person. I may have seen 1 or 2 clips.
All right, so I'm gonna always probably refer to him throughout not just this podcast and this episode, but going forward, because Noam Chomsky makes the case that our consent is manufactured, and the only reason our generation thinks differently than our parents is because we aren't consuming the same media they are. So Noam basically makes the case that there is this propaganda wing that exists on both the left and the right, but mainly the propaganda is tailored for left-wingers, okay? Even though I'm a progressive, I'm willing to admit that our propaganda does come from the left. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, these are all left-leaning news organizations. And if these 3 companies don't talk about something, it doesn't get discussed. So, manufactured consent, okay? So we have a situation where advertisers, he believes that instead of us paying for a service and we're consuming that product, he believes that advertisers are paying for a service. He believes companies are actually paying a company to give us information, to guide us to certain belief patterns, to guide us to be certain things in certain ways, that we're being manufactured all the time through advertising, through the debates. So if you actually watch the Democratic debate, before the debate even starts, they will coach you at what to believe.
Sure. So I'm going to stop you right there, just so I can kind of chime in about that a little bit. So
could you see what I'm saying with that?
So to most people, to average people, and this, I really shouldn't say average people, that can be offensive. Most people who don't critically think about these kind of ideas that we talk about, they would fall into that type of propaganda you're talking about.
I would disagree.
So
here's what I'm going to say, though. That's actually not true. That's the opposite of what Noam teaches, actually. So Noam actually teaches that the people who are most susceptible are the most intelligent people in our society. The ones who had the best grades, the ones who do the best in school, the ones highest in the social ladder in our society are the most susceptible to this propaganda because they've been taught their entire life. So he's not necessarily the people who are average people.
I see the point. Yeah.
The average workers. If you tell an average worker that our society is rigged, they believe it. If you tell an average person that our politicians are all corrupt, they believe it. It's unfortunately the problem is those same people aren't voting.
So what you're talking about is with this manufactured consent. I see your point. It sounds like a huge conspiracy theory, like an alternate, kind of like what's the term I'm looking for? A I can't say that word.
Totalitarian government.
Yeah, it really sounds like you have a government and I forget who said it, but they said if you control the media, you control the masses. And I do see the trend of, and you see it now with advertisement. From the early age, we are coached what to believe and how to think. So I could see them.
Columbus.
Yeah, right. And I always tell the story in 3rd grade whenever we were celebrating Columbus Day, because I was a very curious kid and actually read the history books, not the one they gave me, but we had a whole history book at home, like an older one, portrayed Columbus in a very different way. And I kind of said that to my teacher that, he killed, he raped, he murdered people. I said this in 3rd grade and I got suspended. So, So yeah, no, I very much remember that that manufactured consent of we've been taught to believe a certain way. So then I would have to ask you is if they're targeting the most intelligent people, then they must be doing that for a reason, right?
I want to kind of tail into this whole thing because really everything that's going on in our world goes into this whole thing. So basically, he goes over this is a little cartoon, okay? But I think it does the best job of actually explaining what manufactured consent is, how it functions for our lives, how advertisers control us, and how the media also controls us. So
You're supposed to say the number, Kyle.
Let the guy tell us. I don't know what I'm doing.
it's all good. It's all good. No. So basically, Noam Chomsky goes over this, and what it is basically the 5 filters of the mass media machine. So I want to start, before we start the video, I want to express that Noam Chomsky is a PhD professor at MIT.
Okay.
Okay. He wrote the book Manufactured Consent based on a 500-page thesis that he wrote. So this whole thing isn't a conspiracy theory.
Right.
It's his research based on, he asked the question, if we did live in a society that was manufactured, how would that world look? And this is what it is.
Propaganda. Many use the word when talking about countries like North Korea, Kazakhstan, Iran. Countries viewed as authoritarian through the lens of the Western media. Press freedom, freedom of thought. People use those terms when talking about countries like the United States, France, Australia, democracies. In 1988, Noam Chomsky co-authored a book with Edward Herman called Manufacturing Consent. It blasted apart the notion that media acts as a check on political power, that media inform the public, serve the public, so that we can better engage in the political process. In fact, media manufacture our consent. They tell us what those in power need them to tell us so we can fall in line. Democracy is staged with the help of media that work as propaganda machines. Media operate through 5 filters. The first has to do with ownership. Mass media firms are big corporations. Often they're part of even bigger conglomerates. Their end game, profit. And so it's in their interests to push for whatever guarantees that profit. Critical journalism takes second place to the needs and interests of the corporation.
I'm gonna keep where it's at, but am I unmuted?
We are good.
Cool. So
Right.
what I want to kind of get with this is that the media chooses profit over what's factual. It will always do that. So what I want to kind of tail into this whole is that since 2016, we've been discussing Russiagate. Okay.
Sure.
And the Russiagate accusation is that Trump worked with Putin to rig the election. Okay. Now, what I want to tail with this is this: we don't talk about anything that's important in our media for the most part. A news story happens, and the next day it's almost gone.
Sure. So to address that, unfortunately, we do live in this overhyped, this constant 24-hour cycle of news being fed to you through multiple different ways. Social media has made the ability to produce news within, seconds and stories. And my issue is I don't believe that this is a conspiracy theory, the video you're showing it. And so the viewers can understand, if you didn't get what the video and what Kyle was trying to portray, is that all of this is being manufactured. This manufactured consent is this idea of, from an early age, from an early time period, you are automatically kind of coached what to believe. And I, with studying psychology, with being in sales for a very long time, understand it's very easy to coach And whether you believe it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, you are easily manipulated and subconsciously influenced. And if you think you're not, you're the most delusional of us all, to be honest with you. Everybody is susceptible to it. So I know that this is true. My issue is this. We've seen this trend through history. Kings and queens used to own everything. Now our kings and queens, we've traded that for this democracy system that is way better than our old king, queen system, but it's not, in the fact of those kings and queens have been replaced by corporations. That's where the money and politics, corporations now control the economy, in a sense. Large corporations rather than the free market and rather than the people, right? So
corporations are the free market.
Corporations are not the free market, and I can explain that. And so my issue is this, and I'm going to say something that may be a little controversial and may make people upset, but it's the truth. And if you study history and if you study people for long enough, you can understand this trend. Most people, they're okay with being a sheep. They don't want the veil being removed from their eyes. I'm sorry, but people are, we see this all the time whenever we talk about atheism and we talk about the hard truths of atheism, we see that veil, people trying to hide behind that veil again. Because it's uneasy. It doesn't make you feel good. It's not all... People want to be taken care of. Most people want to be employees, in a sense. And we are an employee of this democratic system, in a sense. It's almost like a job, if you will. So hopefully I'm explaining this. The problem is I don't believe, and history has never shown, people waking up. They temporarily wake up. And they overthrow their current power, which is what happened, how America was basically founded. They got sick of the old king, queen, Catholic Church model of religion and kings and queens owning everything and telling you what you can and can't do, right? Mm-hmm. And then they overthrew that government, replaced it with a new, better one. This is a better system that we have, but once again, it's corrupted. Mm-hmm. It didn't initially start out that way, or I can't confidently say that because I was not back that way. Yeah. I think there's always been that possibility that it was. So my issue is this, is how do we know this isn't just another us overthrowing a system we don't see benefiting us, and the new system's okay for a couple generations, like our old system was very okay for more than a couple, and people go back to going to sleep.
I would argue that there's always been a slave class, and there always could be a slave
class. That's my point. There will always be class division.
What I mean by that, though, is you're saying it was better or was better at one time. There's always been a slave class. There's always been a class of people that unfortunately have to be the bottom of the totem pole. But we are in a time frame now where it doesn't need to be that extreme. And even now, it's more extreme than ever. But I will argue that, yes, people are having their revolution. But the thing that people don't typically have, so I'm gonna word this a little bit better. So this type of system that we're seeing with manufactured consent, you think you'd only see this in a totalitarian government, a government that like Russia, like China, like South America, something that's extreme, right?
Yeah, but you would expect this to definitely be in place, not necessarily in our society, but it is.
So the thing about it is you don't need propaganda in those countries because you have brute force. They still do propaganda.
Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. They definitely do.
But the idea is that if you have a democracy, you have to have propaganda. Because the thing about it is people have an actual say. If they have a say, they need to be confused. So I'm going to continue this clip because there's one part of the end that talks about there needs to be a bad guy. There always needs to be a bad guy. And I think this is true for both sides and ultimately why we can't have any kind of productive conversation. So right now we're at a place where they talked about how the mass media is choosing profits over people. It's choosing profits over the actual news. Okay? So I'm going to hit play. We're going to keep on going. And I just want to see the rest of the video because this kind of tails into everything else we're talking about with Tulsi Gabbard, with Andrew Yang, with Bernie Sanders. We're seeing 3 presidential candidates getting blackballed by the party and also by the media. So.
The second filter exposes the real role of advertising. Media costs a lot more than consumers will ever pay. So who fills the gap? Advertisers. And what are the advertisers paying for? Audiences. And so it isn't so much that the media are selling you a product, their output. They're also selling advertisers a product, you. How does the establishment manage the media? That's the third filter. Journalism cannot be a check on power because the very system encourages complicity. Governments, corporations, big institutions know how to play the media game. They know how to influence the news narrative. They feed media scoops, official accounts, interviews with the experts. They make themselves crucial to the process of journalism. So those in power and those who report on them are in bed with each other. If you want to challenge power, you'll be pushed to the margins. Your name won't be down. You won't be getting in. You've lost your access. You've lost the story. When the media, journalists, whistleblowers, sources, stray away from the consensus, they get flagged. That's the fourth filter. When the story is inconvenient for the powers that be, you'll see the flak machine in action, discrediting sources, trashing stories, and diverting the conversation. To manufacture consent, you need an enemy, a target. That common enemy is the fifth filter. Communism, terrorists, immigrants, a common enemy. A boogeyman to fear helps corral public opinion. 5 filters, one big media theory. Consent is being manufactured all around you, all the time.
So, there we go. So basically, just watching this, you know, this is Gnome's theory. Okay,
Right.
so he has somewhat evidence of it, but for the most part, he asked the question: if we lived in this type of world, what would it look like?
Sure.
And basically, what he comes to the conclusion is that it would look where the powerful are always getting away with stuff. Okay, but not just that. Our media always is subservient and always goes against workers' rights. They all, like, for instance, right now, so Andrew Yang just came out with his Medicare for All policy.
Yeah.
Okay. You're for Medicare for All, correct?
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that when it comes to the Democratic Party, anyone who doesn't do Medicare for All typically is taking donations from health insurance companies. And the media does this hit job on Medicare for All. It's constantly talking bad about it on MSNBC, on Fox News,
Right.
all these outlets, no matter what side you're on, they are always attacking it. And I find it interesting that the Hillarys, the Bidens, the Buttigiegs, you know, even Obama's now even against Medicare for All, you know? So it's interesting to me that, like, there's always a reason not to do policy that is going to end corruption, which is money in politics, which is what we touched on a little bit with you.
Sure.
But I don't know, like, if you don't mind me asking, what are you against? So to kind of divert away from this, you know, let's tail into Medicare for All a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. So let me give my opinion on this.
Cool.
And
Go for it.
then we will go into that discussion of healthcare. So with this, yeah, this is something early on. Whenever I was in my I went through a transition period from the age of about 19 to 23 of just, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I believed. Not only was I converting from Christianity to becoming an agnostic, from an agnostic to being an atheist, I also didn't know politically. I didn't have a political identity. So I went down so many rabbit holes of learning who I was. And early on, I realized how susceptible we are to being influenced. And I realized that the only way you have to, so I do believe this 100%. I do think that this is and we're seeing it right now, right? We're seeing the president. I don't know if you saw the video. So Louder with Crowder, shout out to you, Steven Crowder. I love Steven Crowder. Sometimes, but sometimes I hate what you post because it's absolutely ridiculous, especially when you talk about atheists. Like, I love to debate you, but anyway, he posted this amazing clip of, I forget the independent agency that did it. They basically confronted him with that clip we talked about earlier, the ABC clip.
Yeah.
The ABC president would not give a comment. And it's funny because that's exactly what this video shows is they had to be subservient to the powers that be of burying the story,
and
right?
that was the first filter.
That was the first filter, right? Yes. And he buried it and didn't say anything about it. So that almost proves this in itself, that he apparently, and again, I don't know if this has been stated or not, he apparently had no idea about any I don't believe that in a second.
It's also advertisers too, is a second filter.
Sure. So I think, to end on this note, is I think we all need to be more aware how susceptible we are to influence. And I think the only way we combat, and we need to realize everybody has a natural bias towards something. Mm-hmm. We all have, and you need to understand, what am I biased? I'm biased against a lot of things, and that will influence your opinions on things. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, if you don't want, you're never going to fully get away from that influence or being influenced. It's impossible. We are psychological, physiological human beings, and there's always somebody smarter than you that would be, groupthink is the most dangerous thing in the world. I'd love to talk about that later. You should always just be more self-aware and don't immediately, if something seems too good to be true, it's obviously too good to be true.
How do you be self-aware in this?
You critically analyze. This is what I do. When I have an idea that it makes me emotion, when it appeals to my emotion, right? That type of argument is called the appeal to emotion. Whenever people start talking about women and children and your families, that's an appeal to emotion. They're not appealing to that higher level cognitive thinking. They're basing their argument off of you responding emotionally a certain way so they can manipulate you to believing that. Okay. And we see that everywhere. That appeal to emotion is so popular. We're so susceptible to that because we're primitive. We are animals still. We are mammals, you know? Mm-hmm. Back to the point of, you asked a question. Ask it again.
So
how do we
avoid being susceptible?
Sure. Because
you're saying literally though that if anyone talks about, appealing to your emotions. So for instance, political candidates.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
Medicare for all.
Yeah.
Is that an appeal to our emotions?
Yeah, absolutely is. Okay. And so you always want to do this immediately. This is why the show is called Seeking Skeptics. That's why my show is very similar to that. I'm always skeptical of any new idea. Okay. I come at it with a different perspective than most. Okay. And I unpack ideas, and if it makes me emotional, look at motivational speakers. They're the best at it. People who sell you your own dreams, Tony Robinson and all those guys, that's a perfect example of appeal to emotion and getting you hyped up on you feel good. And when you feel good, you're even more susceptible. Anyway, I'm kind of trailing off. Back to it. If it's an appeal to your emotion, you're having an emotional response and you initially agree with what they're talking about, you need to take a step back cognitively and say, why do I agree with that? Mm-hmm. Well, it feels right. Well, when I was in school and when I was younger, a lot of things felt right. Didn't mean it was right. When I was a Christian, it felt right. Well, it doesn't mean it's right. You know what I mean? So
we're going to unpack that real quick because you're getting into the religion too much without us actually understanding some stuff. Sure. So let's unpack this a little bit I would agree. I would make the statement, and you can see if you agree with this, that we both were very emotionally involved in our faith for whenever we were Christians.
Sure. And to give a little context, people who don't know, when I say me and Kyle were Christians, we were the real deal. We attempted to be the real deal. I read the entire Bible. I shouldn't say the entire Bible. I read a good 90% of the Bible. There's like 2 books I didn't read because I wasn't really interested. Revelation and I believe Numbers, because it's just the lineage of, it's there's not really to understand there other than how they. That's more the historical aspect of it. Anyway, so that's really the only 2 books I didn't read.
Okay.
Outside of that, I read the entire Bible, which led me to being an atheist, oddly enough.
And I was going to school to be a pastor.
Yeah.
So at 18 years old, I believed it with everything inside me, and I mean, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to tell people about this thing that I believed could save people. You know, like I believed so heavily that, you know, that I had this answer to life, and it was there was a lot of pressure with that. You know, at the same time, it was something that, like, you know, weighted on you. You know, like the guilt that you had to share this story, but basically, I want to tail into this because we got fooled. I mean, essentially. I mean, we fell into this emotional thing, and so much so that, like, at what point does someone, you know, how do I word this? You know, you want to be skeptical. You know, you want to have this balance of skepticism, and you want to have this balance of logic. But sometimes I get worried about people being too skeptical because they're getting to a point where they're just questioning something, rather than even analyzing it.
Sure. So to kind of respond to that, somebody really profound, and it actually came from the church, believe it or not, said something really profound to me when I was going through my phase of becoming this transition period of I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I believed, I didn't know if God was real, I didn't know if God wasn't real. And I was debating this specific individual, I'm not going to name them, and I said, you have to have an open mind. And they said something to me that made a lot of sense. They said, you open your mind to close it on something. And I understood exactly what they meant in that aspect. What that means is you're correct. You can't be so skeptical that you just believe nothing. That makes no sense. You need to be skeptical in the sense of you just need to critically analyze, and you need to do the research and trust what the evidence says. And if the facts change, well, then your opinion should change where the facts direct. And that's not what we see. Most people base their entire belief system off of what they were taught, what the school taught them, what the parents taught them, what the church taught them, what their neighbor taught them, their life experience. That's all anecdotal stuff. That's not evidence. That's just anecdotal, meaning that that's your experience, which that means something, and I don't want to take that away from people. But at the same time, you need to realize there's a whole world outside of yourself. And when I say be critical and I say be skeptical, realize that you're so susceptible to being fooled. We were so fooled.
Uh-huh.
We believed miracles and healing. We believed people at church were being healed.
Pause.
Okay.
So
pause.
I'm going to explain this because the church that we went to basically had prophets that would come all across the area, and they basically would try to predict the future, and they would do healings and grant miracles, basically. And if you had a certain amount of faith, you would get those miracles sometimes. But if you didn't have faith, sometimes you would get those miracles. But there were like all these rules and all these different ways and reasons why it didn't work all the time. But not only didn't work all the time, but on top of that, there's always a reason for why it either did or didn't happen. There's always a logical reason why it did or didn't happen. There's always some kind of like loophole to get God out of not doing the miracle kind of thing.
Right. The fault was never on God.
It can't be.
The fault was never on God, right? Because God has to be everything, has to be perfect all the time, right? So that's what the Bible teaches. That's what it preaches. So yeah, and I would like to have the in-depth, deeper religion discussion, but I don't want to necessarily...
I want to tail into this a little bit because honestly, for me, Christianity has a lot to do with why I was a Republican at one point.
Well, yeah, same here. I was a firm Republican. Now I'm not. I'm more conservative, liberal, and in the middle. I mean, I would say I'm firmly there.
Well, so the thing about it is, though, is like, does it ever bother you when politicians use God as a mechanism to basically get the masses to fall in, kind of?
Yeah, so religion was an amazing invention to control the masses. And that goes back to my whole theory that people are sheep. So
these people believe it. No, these.
Well, yeah, they have the sheep mind.
Well, no, I'm saying the politicians even believe it.
Well, right. That's my thing. Well, some of them are genuine, some are not. I mean, let's be honest with that. And that goes for this church and the people who make a crap ton of money off of these poor people donating. Anyway, back to your point. Separation of church and state is what makes America so great. and that's what really changed the world. And I think what people don't realize is they want to focus so heavily on our America has a dark past, but we also have one of the most progressive pasts in all of modern history.
How so?
We revolutionized the entire world with democracy.
I would say that, again, the whole point of me showing this is to show that, like, our consent has been manufactured the entire time since the 1920s.
Correct.
We have evidence of this.
I'm
this
not
working
taking
through.
away from that debate. I'm simply stating the facts of the time. If you look at history, at that time, Americans were radicals. They were breaking away from the Catholic Church. They were breaking away their ties with Great Britain, their home country, their mother country, creating their own country. They were complete rebels. They were extremists, terrorists almost. And they created a new system, a free system, which isn't necessary. I mean, we can have that debate, but it's a way better system than we had. And I firmly believe that, and history shows that.
I mean, this is going to sound horrible to word it this way, but I mean, black people weren't free until the 60s.
Right, and that's kind of a different subject we can touch
It's not.
on. And
this
it's
is all correlated to, like, you're saying that we were a progressive country, but the only reason we accomplished what we accomplished on a capitalistic level is because we enslaved an entire community.
We did. And I'm never going to take that away from any community or any ethnic group that has been condemned and damned by any group, right? And my point to that is, that goes back to the whole thing of there's always a slave class, and you're right. But the other thing we're not taking into context, and this is what a lot of people who don't study history. I've always been a history buff. I love history. Okay. And if you look at the trends through history, right? So, and again, this isn't me justifying any points to how we did things or the terrible atrocities that we did.
I mean, I'll even go
at
farther.
the times. That was a social norm to own a slave. You grew up and you owned a slave. That's, you know, if you grew up on a plantation.
That's not the question, though. What I'm saying, though, is like, you're saying that we've been progressive and our country is great because where it's at. I'm making the claim that our country isn't that great because of any other reason than we enslaved a bunch of people.
Sure.
Got free labor.
Sure.
Do you know what the best time for black people was? The 7 years after slavery. Do you know why?
Why? Because
they were the only skilled workforce. The only one who could weld were black people. The only ones who could do farming were black people. The only ones who could do anything were black people.
Sure.
So it's amazing because guess what happened during those 7 years? Black people acquired, I think, around 20% of the nation's land in 7 years.
Right. They absolutely were a thriving community that we stepped in.
And then we segregated them.
Correct. But if you look at the trend in history, we have always progressively overcame. Atrocities have happened, we treated minorities. We did the same thing to the Chinese people. After slavery ended.
Japanese
and Chinese. It was literally a mix. We shipped them over here to work on the railroads and paid them nothing.
Again, though, what I'm getting at with this whole thing is that it can't be both. It can't be both that we did this beautiful, amazing thing as a culture, and at the same time, that beautiful thing that we did is progressive and good, and also at the same time when we look back on it, we have to use, we have to come with a little bit of skepticism.
Sure. And to that point, I think that's totally wrong. You can have both, and there's proof that we have both in this country. There's complete proof. We have come a long way from where we've come.
We still have slaves.
We've done atrocities.
We still have slaves.
How so?
Our prison population.
Well, that's a different conversation.
No,
but yeah,
Amazon is running its facility out of prisons.
I did not know that. I'll have to.
If someone can Google it for us, to Google Amazon prison shipment centers.
Sure.
Just Google that real quick. But no, the reason why I'm saying this though is because all of this is connected to this.
Again, my point is this: there has been both. Life is a lot better now than it has ever been in any point in history. We live longer. We're healthier. We have a not necessarily thriving economy. We do actually have a thriving economy, but the American people aren't seeing the benefits of that.
What is our country doing to make that happen? Is it just the free market?
Well, I mean, I can't really answer that because there's so many. There's so
Give me
so
two
many
things that you really think that are really impacting the fact that our country is better than it's ever been. You know, I guess one of the questions I always ask.
No. I've never. Okay, so when I say it's better than it's ever been, I'm talking about overall life.
Yeah.
Life in general is better than it's ever been throughout history. Our poorest are the richest in some of these other countries. Even the homeless. The fact that they can go in and get a clean drink out of the water fountain for free. Clean water is there. I think the statistic was, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure somebody, once we upload everything, is totally going to destroy me on this. So 70% of the entire human population doesn't even have access to clean drinking water. I think it's actually higher than that. But
I would say though that, like, again, we are the richest country,
correct,
in the entire world, and our infrastructure got a D-.
Yes, and I'm not saying that we still don't have a long way to go. We do.
Okay.
But I am saying we've come. It's not like we have physical slaves right now.
We do.
If people are in prison, they're in prison, and we can have that conversation. And I've looked heavily into that. Correct. And we should, as we've talked about before, we should legalize marijuana, and we need to cut down on. Our prison system needs reform, and the fact that we can't have private prisons. We need state-run prisons. Why do we have private prisons? They incentivize you getting more time.
Yeah.
They incentivize that because they get money from the government.
That's called capitalism.
In the sense of, and here's the thing.
You're asking that. You're saying this though, and this is the problem I have with a lot of people who say they are capitalist. You're saying that the private prison is bad, and the state-run prison is good, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't believe capitalism should be involved in running prisons.
So I'll give you my firm answer. There's never been a true capitalist society on this earth, just like there's never been a true socialist society on this earth. So there are some things the state needs to control, and there's some things the free market needs to control. Okay. So this kind of ties into healthcare. Healthcare is not a market. Healthcare technology is a free market.
Okay.
But healthcare for an individual, that's a social issue. That is taking care of our population.
Okay.
That should be handled by the government and the local state.
I like that answer.
Prisons are the same way. That's a social issue. Someone's in prison. They've done a crime.
Products that are sold to the prison. Products that are sold at the prison, maybe like the beds.
Sure,
stuff
like that's a free market.
That's a free market.
But the actual population in the state-run prison should not be privately held.
So you don't want the government making the products?
No.
You want the government...
I want the government reforming our prisoners and teaching them skilled labor.
So what if
there are things that capitalism sucks at, and there's a lot of things socialism sucks at.
What's something that you believe that no matter what, socialism couldn't do better than capitalism?
Socialism could not create the same. So socialism,
a product, like a thing that you like. For instance, you said healthcare. We have prison population.
Sure.
Means something.
Sure.
Like
so perfect example. Let's take the Postal Service, right?
Okay.
That's ran by the state. That's a socialist program.
It's a federal government thing.
Right.
Yes.
That's a socialist program. Let's take education, for example. That's a socialist. And even with education, I'm in the middle, so that's not the best example. That's not the best example. Even social. Okay, so I said.
Do you think? I mean, I'm not gonna try to strawman you. That's not my goal.
Sure.
I'm not. I want you to craft your best argument when discussing this capitalist idea.
So when it comes to Postal Service, right? The Postal Service is not efficient. It's not efficient. Okay. It is a draining. Look at the DMVs, right? That's not efficient either.
Okay, so wait, just stay on the Postal Service, because I actually believe.
The Postal Service.
So Bernie has a policy that I support called expanding the post office to make them also banks. He wants to take the post office.
Let's talk about the first thing first.
So wait, real quick. Okay. All I'm saying though is like, I'm not going to talk about the bank part, okay? But continue your thing saying that the post. So you want to remove the Postal Service and just do FedEx and UPS?
UPS, Amazon, FedEx work faster. They're the primary shipping method online when you purchase anything, and they're most efficient. And they typically pay better than the Postal Service does.
Do they?
So yes, they do. I've had friends who work for the Postal Service. Now, anytime you work for the federal government, the type of benefits you receive are better, in my opinion. But the Postal Service is really not the most efficient thing in the world. And I'm not saying the employees don't work hard. Of course they do. I'm not talking about the employees, so I don't want people who are viewing this to think I'm talking about the employees. No, I'm talking about the management and the way it's structured. It stinks. It's not a good program. It's never been a good program.
So I will say this. Do you think packages would become more expensive if the post office went away? Do you think the post office, the government getting involved and keeping the price point at a certain level?
Okay.
Do you think that Amazon, do you think UPS, do you think FedEx would exploit package costs if not just that? So you ready for this?
Yeah.
My cousin lives in a rural area. He's an anarcho-libertarian, ironically.
So he's definitely.
But the post office is the only one that will deliver to his door.
Sure.
UPS won't deliver to his house because his road, the to get to his house is about a half a mile down the road. So we have to ask ourselves, the post office is not designed to be a business. That's the thing about a lot of these government programs is they are designed to provide a service. So the thing about it is would people in rural communities still get mail from UPS and FedEx if the post office was gone?
So you make a fair point there, and you make a fair argument. I think why not do this? Incorporate the social programs we do have into the capitalistic market, and then you have competition. We'll use the Postal Service as a perfect example, right?
So you want to
they have so many alternatives. And to your question about your question was, how do we keep the private companies from raising prices?
No, my question was what is something that is either socialist that is bad, or something that is capitalistic that is socialist now that would be better if it was capitalistic? You said the post office. Or my question was if there is something that is capitalistic now, what would be what one of those items, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the prison population,
right? So
what would make it worse if it went to socialism?
So let's take one thing.
Because what if I made the claim, and this is kind of my thing. I agree with you. Said something earlier. You said Democrats intentionally do things incorrectly for the sole purpose to, Hillary Clinton, for instance. You said you believe that she gives half-baked solutions on purpose.
Right. They give all these solutions. We're going to change this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this, and nothing happens. I think it's just a smokescreen.
So, for instance, Obamacare. People don't like talking about it, but we just got to talk about the post office and how that whole system works. Obamacare was designed by pharmaceutical companies. Medicare for all, if it goes into existence, healthcare insurance companies go away. Okay, they're gone. You don't need them.
Yes and no.
No, they're gone. No, they are.
No, in Canada, they're not gone. You
so
have private insurance.
The bill itself, Medicare for All is a 200-page bill. It removes private insurance. And the reason is because you know what private insurance's purpose is in the marketplace at this moment? They're supposed to be the negotiator on my behalf. So they're supposed to go to these pharmaceutical companies and say, hey, Kyle's willing to buy your product, but he's not willing to pay more than X, Y, Z. But for some reason, these health insurance companies, again, these for-profit capitalistic companies, somehow have the price of insulin at $300 a vial.
Correct.
But Medicare can buy it at $35.
Right. So
like,
that's a perfect example of what capitalism does bad. Private insurance is bad capitalism. And I would say it like this. We need a similar system what Canada has, where they still do have private healthcare. And there's actually private clinics that you can go to. I'm all for that. I'm all for there where there are no and you do have to make, and some people aren't going to like this, but there are private clinics that you're able to go to. If you make and you can afford that private insurance, you can actually go to a private clinic where you can skip the line for a lot of the other smaller things that you have to actually, sign up for, and you have to wait your turn essentially.
Okay.
So healthcare would not necessarily go away. Private insurance would, and it would get more expensive, but those who could afford it, great, they can afford it. But the primary reason why I believe that the government should take over healthcare is it is unreasonable to tell most people don't have $500 to $1,000 in their savings for any emergency.
I think it's
I think the statistic was plus 70
70 plus
percent.
people don't have over $1,000.
70% plus people don't even have any money for an emergency. How can we expect people to have an injury or things happen and they have to choose file bankruptcy or have no money and pay this medical bill, and give them bad credit and give them no opportunity? That's completely unfair, and it's completely unreasonable. We should have equal access to healthcare, and I don't see why we can't pay for it. It doesn't make sense.
Over 44% of all bankruptcies are due to healthcare bills.
Right, 44%. It's absolutely ridiculous that we are burdening the American, that's why I'm all for the trickle up economy. I'm not all for giving people free money and for free stuff. One thing socialism can't do that capitalism does, capitalism incentivizes hard work and grit. And what I mean by this is, perfect example, and I use this. This is an anecdotal response. This is personable evidence. So I want everybody to know that. So I guess it may be not true in a sense.
Go for it.
If you take somebody like myself, statistically, I should still be where statistically it shows people stay in their range of demographic. They stay, typically. They don't cross lines. I grew up in a very poor trailer park, drug infested. My parents did not teach me financial literacy, teach me anything about life, really. Other than they both worked really hard and we made it paycheck by paycheck, and I really wasn't shown how to prosper. I wasn't. School didn't show me. Nobody really showed me. But I had so much grit and determination to get into the middle class.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
To literally pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just do it, dude. And that's my thing is I don't believe socialism would have solved that problem for me, because I had so much opportunity to show employers. So, perfect example, my job requires a bachelor's degree. I do not have a bachelor's degree.
I know.
I dropped out of college twice.
I know.
So, well, no. You know, but they don't know.
I know. I'm sorry.
So my point is, I really believe that people who work harder than everybody else should have more. But I also believe your basic needs should be taken care of.
Do you work harder than teachers?
And that's where I am, again, very much a socialist on that issue. My girlfriend's a teacher.
Do you work harder than police officers?
Police officers make more than I do.
Do they?
Mm-hmm.
I think the average police officer makes $30K a year.
I don't think that statistic's true. They were just advertising for the state of Missouri to be a state cop with no experience, going through the academy, $65,000 out the gate. Okay. So that's not necessarily true. And for teachers, their base salaries are starting around $42,000 around the St. Louis metro, which is decent. And my base salary is about $60,000. Mm-hmm. So cops are making about the same as me. I'm making a little bit more than teachers, but the market does value my job higher than a teacher's job, because I'm convincing people with millions of dollars to basically transition that money over. So
just for everyone to know, Alex works in a nice neighborhood in the St. Louis area in banking. So
I'm a banker.
What I want to kind of tailor this though is again, our capitalistic society has viewed bankers above teachers.
Correct.
Has used bankers above police officers.
Right, because the market value, I make more money for companies than teachers make money for the school system.
But when we ask ourselves again, we're asking ourselves the value of people. The only reason your value is increased is because you're...
Well, here's something you're not realizing. Schools are ran by the state and local government. They're not run by private industry.
Mm-hmm.
So right there's a problem with socialism.
Okay. What about
We're not paying teachers. The government has decided that they're not going to give teachers, they're barely going to give them a living wage.
Are you ready for this? So, do you know who Betsy DeVos is?
I do not, actually.
So now we're going to tailor into education. Okay. So we got a little bit more left, but basically Betsy DeVos ran into what she's doing right now is basically trying to strip the state of its funding by making Jesus schools. So she's switching a lot of private schools, public funding, into a ticket system.
It's absolutely terrible.
So if you live in, and the thing about it is also is the reason why schools, public schools are bad is because a lot of them are funded by guess what? Guess how they are funded? Do you know what tax dollars funds schooling? Zip
Typically
code.
casinos.
Well, maybe. I don't know about that, but it's tax code.
That's why you buy lottery tickets.
Lottery
and
tickets
you
too.
do that. Yeah. So they have to give a certain.
We're in a situation where, based on where you live, your school is determined for you. Okay? The quality of schooling is given to you.
Sure. So my question is that ran by the state or is that ran by the free market?
It is ran by the state.
Okay.
But
it's a social program.
Again, though,
right?
It is so schools are ran on a social level.
Okay.
But two things. One, we have people like Betsy DeVos who are intentionally stripping public school of their funding for the sole purpose of lowering their test scores and giving that money to private schools. Okay. Because why? We need people to believe in God. We need people to be religious. We need that in our society. I would say that's
what we were talking about a little bit. Just a smidge. Our whole conversation was show me a social program that capitalism would do better. I don't think capitalism would do the school industry any better than the government. I think the government just needs to refocus.
I think right now test scores
needs to be refocused.
I think test scores are equal overall. What I want to do you want to
There's one topic, I did have to kind of divert because we kind of went down a rabbit hole a little bit, and I know we don't have that much time left. But one topic I want to talk about that is very divisive, and I know that this one is going to get me a lot of scrutiny, but I don't care because I have a firm, educated opinion on this.
Okay.
So recently, over the past 6 months or so, I've really been diving into this because it was really bothering me on the inside, and I really didn't know how to reconcile this. I'm pro-life.
You're pro-life.
I'm pro-life, not in the way you think, though. The scientific evidence show that life does begin at conception. Life itself, a human starts to form whenever sperm meets the egg.
Okay.
Right then and there, and even top pro-choice advocates have stated that that's scientifically correct.
Okay.
So the science is in on that matter, and I have a few clips if we want to show it. So this is where pro-life is wrong.
Okay.
I'm pro-life in this sense. I can't deny how precious life is in general.
Okay.
And how and if you want to talk on a cosmological scale, how rare all of this is, that's a different conversation.
Okay.
And I can't reconcile with picking and choosing who lives and who dies. I can't. And for example, my mom was 15 when she had me. She could have easily gotten an abortion. I wouldn't be here.
Yes.
And I can't say confidently the science is not 100% like, how do I word this the appropriate way? I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I'm pro-life in the sense of I believe that pro-life extends after the birth. I'm more pro-adoption than I am just going to get an abortion. I don't like the state telling you what to do with your body. And that's where I'm very much like the state and the government needs to get the hell out of it.
Are you pro-life who's okay with legal abortion? Are you pro-life?
Yes.
You think abortion should be legal?
Yes.
Okay.
Abortion should be legal, but I think that before a young female or anybody makes that decision, you need to be fully educated on what you're doing. And the truth of the matter is, you are killing a life. You are killing a fetus.
Okay.
You are killing a life scientifically.
Okay.
It's proven, and I have a few references if we want to put them up.
Show the clip.
Well, the first clip I really don't necessarily want to show because it's from a Christian outlet, but they talk to a scientist. So
I would love to see it.
Let's play clip number 1. I think it is.
Let's see Christian abortion video.
But the scientist is not a Christian. She's just a scientist who she does studies on it. You know.
Okay.
We can roll the clip.
Okay, I'm excited to see this.
I'm not excited to show it.
I thought you said that you. Oh my gosh! All right.
All right, let's go. Yep.
All right, here we go.
Many in our world today make science their God, but then turn a blind eye when it comes to the scientific reality behind when life begins. For this week's Pro-Life Focus, we introduce you to a group striving to change that.
Based on how so many influential people answer the question today, you might think when human life begins is some unsolved mystery.
At what point does a baby get human rights, in your view?
Answering that question with specificity, is above my pay grade.
If you can hear the heartbeat of this thing, this fetus, what is it? Is it just a piece of tissue, or is it a separate human being?
I think that's up to each individual to decide what they believe.
When a human being begins to exist is not a mystery or a scientific theory or a subjective, political, religious, or personal matter. It is an objective, empirical, and contemporary scientific fact of the biological science of human embryology.
Business professional Brooke Stanton was frustrated with science denial when it came to the human life issue. So she, along with co-founder Christiane West, launched Contend Projects, a secular, nonpartisan science education nonprofit.
We are working to make the basic science about when a human being begins to exist simple and accessible for everyone.
These women think everyone should know this basic scientific fact.
A new human being, a new, whole, individual, living human being begins to exist at the beginning of the process of fertilization, at first contact between the sperm and the oocyte. When these two mere cells make first contact, immediately, specifically, human enzymes and proteins, whole human organism enzymes and proteins, not sperm and oocyte enzymes and proteins, are produced. And a new single-cell human being with his or her own new unique DNA immediately begins to exist.
As it turns out, the start of human life has been well documented over 100 years, and in 1942 instituted as a scientific fact by a secular government agency that's part of the National Institutes of Health. It's come to be known as the Carnegie stages of human embryonic development.
It is an empirical scientific fact that a new single-cell human being is an actual human being, not a possible human being or a potential human being.
Contend Projects has developed a series of tools to introduce this scientific fact into the mainstream. One way is through their website, contendprojects.org, which is filled with videos and information. It also has a free science quiz, so you can gauge how much you know about human embryology. And you don't have to be an expert to give it a try, as yours truly can clearly demonstrate.
First contact is when the sperm cell, I'm going to learn how to pronounce that, oocyte cell together are transformed into a new human being, human organism. I'm going to guess, yes? Okay, all right. How many periods of human development occur before a human being is born? I'm just going to press, and this is probably, might be embarrassing, I'm saying one.
It's okay.
Oops. Two? I'm learning. There are 2 periods of human development before birth, the embryonic period and the fetal period. Okay, I can know science.
There you go.
Exactly.
Everybody should.
Contend Projects also places a major emphasis on school outreach.
A lot of the misinformation is now targeting schools, and people spreading misinformation are in our schools, they're in the Girl Scouts, and we need to be there as well.
The science nonprofit developed a 60-minute human embryology lesson geared towards students in 7th through 10th grade.
It's really critical because when you look at chemistry class, every chemistry class has the periodic table. No high school student graduates without knowing that H2O is water. But they can graduate without knowing that they begin as a single-cell human being at the beginning of the process of fertilization.
And for the younger minds, Contend Projects has created a book for grades 3 through 6.
This book is called You Used to Be Much Smaller, but You Were Still You. If you can talk, if you can walk, if you can dance, or even if you aren't born yet, you are a human being.
It talks to kids about how if you are a human fetus, you're a human being. If you're a human embryo, you're a human being. Just as much as a toddler is a human being, just as much as an elderly person is a human being.
From the classroom to the courtroom, Contend Projects wants to give our world a science lesson on the most important cause.
The science exists, and we really just need to start using the science as the starting point, because as you know, a small error in the beginning leads to a multitude of errors in the end.
Christian outlet.
Hashtag Pro-Life Weekly.
So let us know when we're back on. Okay, we're good. So basically, being an intellectual, I can't deny one, science, and if the facts change, the facts change. Right now, they haven't. You know, since the 40s, they haven't changed. And two, I don't feel okay making that decision of is it a life or is it not a life. I feel like, just as Obama kind of said, which I think it's funny, he said, it's above my pay grade. Well, then how can you legislate on it? You know what I mean? So my issue is this, though. Where pro-life goes wrong is you'll never see me on a pro-life picket fence or a picket line saying you're murdering a child. You won't see me there. Because here's the issue with conservatives, and the issue with, and this is where I get in a lot of debates with conservatives. They're all about you having that baby, but once that baby's born, there's no support for you.
Do you want to? Is that your argument that you want to do that?
Yeah, that's my pro-life. Is I'm pro-life, meaning I'm pro-human. I'm pro-support. I'm pro. And the other issue is this: you see, and somebody can cite the sources if they want, and I can provide them later. Every state on the Bible Belt has the highest teen pregnancy rates. Kids are not going to remain abstinent. They're going to have sex. When I was a teenager, I had sex. Proper sexual education, and in schools where sexual education is prevalent and sexual health is taught, less teen pregnancies. I am more for preventive measures against pregnancy while they're young, and I'm more for there are beautiful families, and we need to reform our adoption system. There are beautiful families. I'm not going to name this person in my family for their privacy, and they spent thousands. They had issues having a kid. They considered adopting, and it's overly expensive. Like, oh my God, is it expensive? And two, they did in vitro, I think 2 or 3 times, which is he's probably spent 30, 40,000. They were successful this time. But if they lose that baby, they're pregnant right now. If they lose that baby, the structure process over and it's a wash. There are people on this planet that if you're a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girl, I don't think your life should be ruined by having a baby. My mom's life was stunted after having 4 kids and having me at the age of 15. Well, actually at the age of 16, but she got pregnant when she was 15. And she was left on her own with little support. Luckily, she pulled through. Some moms don't.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's my issue is they're pro-life, but once the baby's born, we don't care about you. And then you're condemned as a bad mom that had a baby young, and it hits a double-edged BS sword. So that's what I mean by I'm pro-life is I can't constitute. I don't feel comfortable. I think the state needs to stay out of it. The state needs to stay out of it, and religion needs to stay out of it. Okay. It's between you and your doctor, and that's how it should be.
So that's really interesting.
And also, 1 second. So basically, to sum it up, we need a reform on adoption.
Okay, you want to reform adoption.
Being able to bless a beautiful family that'll be able to provide and give that child a life you never could is one of the most amazing gifts you'll ever see.
Okay.
2, women go through a ton of trauma after they have an abortion of, did I make the right choice? Which can lead to, there are horror stories about people going in depressions because of it. Okay. Because they don't think that because they felt pressured either by their family or they were too young. And then 3, that leads into proper sexual education at a very early age. Okay. Preventative measures. Birth control for men needs to be sped up. Birth control for women, they as soon as they start the period, or whenever their medical doctor, I'm not a doctor, I shouldn't say that. Whenever the medical doctor deem it necessary.
You could just make it available.
Yeah, completely free. Yeah. And Planned Parenthood shouldn't be shut down. Should not be shut down. They provide so many other services other than abortions, and abortions should be between the doctor and the patient, and they should have to go through a class, educated class of what they're really doing. They need to be informed, and if they still make that informed decision after, fine. But they're informed. They know what they're doing.
So just to be clear, you're a pro-life person who wants to do proper contraception training for children.
Yes.
You want to do proper sexual education training for children.
Yes.
And you just want the person to be educated at the end when they make that decision. But
abortion should not be the first option. It should be the last option.
But you don't want abortion to be illegal.
No, of course not. Okay. Because there are medical reasons for it.
So I would say that if more pro-life people were like you, we probably would have less abortions overall. Okay? But This is the crazy part. You ready for this? We're gonna go back to the manufactured consent. Okay? Why do you think we live in a country that the only way to get free healthcare is joining the military? The only way to get free education is joining the military, and we also don't allow abortions, and we actually have this insane rate of miseducating children on their sexual, like how they should be having sex.
Sure.
Isn't that interesting to you?
No, and that's completely
I'm gonna make it.
interesting. Yeah.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna add to this. The same party that wants abortion to be illegal, wants healthcare not to be free, wants education not to be free, also is always for the wars that we go to.
It keeps the slave class.
Well, and
if you give people more access, you give people more access.
It gets us bodies for the war.
Sure.
I mean, so here's the thing about it though is like, I always ask people this: if we give people free college and we give people free healthcare, do people join the military? Does our generation?
I was going to join the military for a long time for all of that. I was a poor kid, so having access to college for free,
that's my point.
At least making $25,000, $26,000 a year starting out, and having a structure. Yeah, no, I get it. That's a conversation for another time. We'll have to follow it up.
It's connected, unfortunately, because the reason why abortion is illegal, the reason why people who are pro-life activists typically are. And it's invertively to keep this system going.
Sure.
We need bodies for the war. We need people to be desperate. And we need people to be so poor and being born in bad situations and bad circumstances. Your mom didn't even have... Like, I know moms who have babies and can't afford even preschool. So their kid...
I didn't have it when I was a kid. My mom couldn't afford preschool.
If you don't afford preschool, the odds of you graduating college is down 50%.
Sure. No, I completely see that.
So the real reason why I'm at this is because, like, I think that you're an exception to the rule of what most pro-life activists are.
Sure. And I know I am. So I would like to do this, and I kind of, because we are getting late, and I would like to end on this note, and we need to do a follow-up conversation because we didn't talk about a lot of the things we actually wanted to talk about. One of my good friends is running for Congress, and he is a conservative gay Republican Army Ranger, and I want to play his clip. Because the Republican Party is changing, and he's pro-marijuana, and he says it better than I do. So I think it's the last clip I sent you guys. Go ahead and play that.
Pro-marijuana, gay Republican.
Army Ranger.
Army Ranger.
He'll definitely beat your ass, that's for sure. He looks more manly than everybody in this room, that's for sure. No offense to our producers. All right, we can play it.
I'm Ken Yasgur, and I'm officially announcing my candidacy for the Republican nomination to represent Georgia's 1st Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives. In 2011, the United States Army brought me to Savannah, where I was stationed at Hunter Army Airfield with the 1st Ranger Battalion. While serving with the 75th Ranger Regiment, I served 2 combat tours to Afghanistan, one in 2013 and one in 2014. In 2015, I transitioned from active duty to the Georgia Army National Guard, with whom I just got back from my 3rd combat tour to Afghanistan in July. I'm not flashy, I don't have unlimited funds, and I don't have an extensive political background. What I do have is an undying love for the state of Georgia, the United States of America, and all of her people throughout. I serve the people at a restaurant in Pooler, Georgia. I serve the people of this nation in the military, and I would love the opportunity to serve the people of this country in Washington. In my 30 years, I've made many mistakes, and like others, I have many flaws. But I promise to be a representative who's completely open and upfront with the people whom I serve. Despite my past mistakes, I promise in the next 6 months, I will show you that I am the best person to serve you. In the United States, we have the greatest political system in the world. It's not the system that's broken, it's the politicians that are broken, and it's the money that broke them. We need to get the money out of the politicians' pockets and the people's interests back in their heart. In Georgia's 1st District, we must keep our coast clean. We must help decrease our homeless population, and we must help our amazing law enforcement officials do their job instead of making their jobs more difficult due to political inaction. Throughout the country, we must stop discrimination by companies and agencies who receive state and federal funds, but at the same time, protect the religious liberties and freedoms of privately owned businesses without the threat of government interference. We must protect the Second Amendment and guarantee our citizens' right to protect themselves and their families. We must continue to overhaul the VA and take care of our veterans who are suffering in silence every day. one veteran committing suicide is one too many, let alone 22. We must protect the right to life and guarantee that every child has a chance at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But while we're protecting the life of the unborn, we cannot forget about the woman who may be struggling with the hardest decision of her life. We must care for the future mother both physically and mentally. We must fix the broken foster care system and make United States adoptions much more accessible and affordable. Being pro-life does not end when the baby is born. We must be pro-life for the woman and the baby after the child is brought into this world. When I was active duty, I was the first openly gay Ranger in the 1st Ranger Battalion. I don't say that like as an accomplishment or to shove certain views down your throat. I say that in order to break down political stereotypes and barriers. The Democratic Party is doing a great job of making us believe they care about the minority population in this country. They are making socialism look and sound attractive. In response, the Republican Party has gone further to the right on issues such as gay rights and medical marijuana use. Instead, the Republican Party needs to be more inclusive to all people, no matter your race, sex, or sexual orientation. The Republican Party needs to stop the fake, expensive, tiresome war on drugs and realize that medical marijuana may not be the ultimate answer, but it's a great place to start with Americans suffering with multiple sclerosis, PTSD, and Alzheimer's, just to name a few. Big pharmaceutical companies are running the medical world, and it's the war on drugs that's allowing them to do it. I am here to show people that the Republican Party is the party for all Americans. It's time that we make the Republican Party and capitalism attractive again. I'm Ken Yasger, and I'll be working 24/7 to be for you what our representatives were intended to be, a true servant to the people. Thank you in advance for giving me a shot, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
To the real life. So you're saying you don't agree with him on everything. What do you not agree with him on?
So first, I'd like to say, Ken is the Republican that we should all want to become, or the person we should want to become. As you see, is very diverse views, and I think we've been trapped in these camps of you can't cross lines. Like if you're on this side, you have to believe all these set of things. And that's not true. And it's on the left and on the right. It's become more divisive. And this is the kind of candidates we need on both the left and the right for progress. Right here, progress.
I agree.
So, of course,
I will let you know.
Guy's a Christian, believes in God. I don't, and I don't necessarily. There are a couple. There's like maybe one or two other points, but again, it's guys like him though that get shut down by our entire political system because they want to shake things up. They want to make real change.
Well, I would say that again. It's designed that way.
Right. It's designed, and that's what he's saying. Money in politics crushes the little guy.
Well, I would say that he's the first Republican that I've ever heard that actually have an issue with money in politics. I would want to know what so I would love to have him actually do a little Skype call with him. We can talk to him.
Yeah.
Figure out what policy he's actually wanting to implement, because you can't get money out of politics. What does he want to do? Does he want to stop campaign funds?
So
does he
probably something similar to what Andrew Yang has suggested of we give everybody you get 1,000 campaign dollars or something like that, where the people can actually donate that. They don't get the physical cash, but the government would give that.
That's what I'm confused about. That is socialism again. He's had an anti-socialist message
again. We need a balance of socialism and capitalism. Socialism does things better in certain things, and capitalism does things better than socialism in certain things. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. And we talk about them like they are. We talk about it like we live in a complete free market, and we don't.
I would say that the only group that is talking about it like it's separate is the Democratic establishment and the Republicans.
Yeah.
Whenever we talk about democratic socialism, the only context we're talking about it on is we're voting on things that we think the government could do better.
Sure.
Healthcare, stuff like that. So I would like to, like I said, we can reach out to him, see if we can set up a talk and see if we can make something happen.
Sure.
But do we have any final points that you want to make?
No. I mean, there were a couple things I would have liked to cover, but we'll definitely have to do a follow-up. I just appreciate our producers. I appreciate everybody here. Train Set Club, definitely killing it. We have Hez and Luigi back here, just just making magic happen that we can never do because we're not that talented. So again, appreciate everybody, and if you have any feedback whatsoever, just please comment. Try to be not hateful, just debate in a proactive way.
Ask us questions.
Ask questions, yeah.
We have two sides of the spectrum here. We have someone who, you know, is wanting this quasi-capitalistic world, still wanting to hold on to it. And we have someone who very much sees
quasi-capitalist.
It's quasi-capitalist. Like, it's like you're in this weird boat.
We're getting into the debate again. We'll have to continue it, but yeah.
No, literally, we can, like I said, please comment. Please debate us. Please talk to us about these things because we have more in common than we think we do. So
absolutely,
we're out.
That's a wrap, guys. Damn.
So scared that you don't want